Now let's take a look at how you can put a title in your program. In this case, we're going to identify the host when she says her name. And to do this, we're going to use two separate elements. We're going to use a prepared graphic with the bars, which is simply a Photoshop document or a TIFF document. And we're also going to use a pre-built title. If you go over to your project folder, you'll see that inside the graphics folder is an item labeled lower third DGF for Delight Gluten-Free. If I double-click to load that into my source monitor, I'll see two lines on top of a black background. Now, that black background is actually transparent. So when this graphic was built, they said there is no background. I can just lay it on top and I'll see whatever is below on a lower track. To bring this clip into your timeline, once again, simply grab it and drag it. And instead of putting it onto track 1, you're going to put it onto track 2. And when I let go of my mouse, and I'll move my playhead over a little bit, we can see those lines, and we can see through the graphic to the host introducing herself. Once we've done that, we want to finesse our lower third so it comes on right when she says her name, and it will fade off when she's done.
Gluten-free eats. I'm Vanessa.
So that's pretty good. She's saying, I'm Vanessa. And since we're going to ultimately fade up, I actually want to start a little bit early.
I'm Vanessa Weisford, executive editor of Delight Gluten-Free magazine, and I'm so...
And by the time she says, and, I want to be out. So I'm going to grab the end of that clip and drag it over to the left and let it snap to where my playhead was parked. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the next line, and this is actually a title graphic. And if you scroll down, you'll see there's a folder called Titles. Now, if you've been following along and creating your own timeline, you'll need to open up the project file 01_07, so you'll have the pre-built title that I created. Later on in this course, we'll learn how to create titles from scratch, but for now, I just want you to get a feel for how you would build this. I'm going to go ahead and double-click it. Now, the reason I did this is I want you to see that if you double-click on a title, it actually opens it up in its own separate window where you can modify it. In our case, it's perfect, so I'm going to go ahead and close that window. Now, instead of double-clicking it to load it into the source monitor, I'm going to simply grab it and drag it and drop it into the source monitor, and I can see exactly what it looks like. Now, if I wanted to, I could have grabbed it directly from the project pane and dragged it into my timeline, but let's keep following the same paradigm. It already is positioned properly and everything is typed out, so I can simply grab it, drag it, and now put it on the third video track, and I'll line it up with the very beginning of the lower third and let go. Now to make sure they're the same length, I'm going to zoom in by pressing the plus key. If you overshoot and need to zoom out a little bit, you can press the minus key, and I'll drag the edge so they both end exactly at the same time. Now, these will perfectly line up because I've kind of pre-baked them for you. But one more thing that you may want to do is fade in and fade out the titles. And as we learned in an earlier movie, you can simply right-click and apply your default transitions. So I'm going to put a fade out on both of those layers. I'm going to stretch this out a little bit so I can see the beginning of my clip and do the same thing so they will fade on as she says her name. Now let's take a look at the completed lower third.
Free Eats. I'm Vanessa Weisford, executive editor of Delight Gluten-Free magazine, and I'm so excited to welcome you to...
I think that timing and the fade in and fade out looks pretty good, and I'm ready to put more titles into my show.